and then with kids content, that was just something I saw like in front of me at home with my own kids. And the stuff that they were actually kind of gravitating to was not clips and stuff from like Nickelodeon or Cartoon Network. It was content from people that you only found on YouTube. So Kids TV 123, Super Simple Learning, Mother Goose Club. I think the thing I was kind of looking at was how to actually build out part of this kids kind of content ecosystem. And there were great creators coming out of Japan, Korea, India, Malaysia. There's a couple in Malaysia actually created some IP, and their background was the father was in real estate, and he was actually going to go retire. And I think his wife was like, "No, I don't want you at home. You need something to occupy yourself." And so then he went and partnered with his daughter. And what they were looking at was like, there's just no local content that represents the culture, in our market. And so they created a new animated series and characters that, in just like Malaysia and Indonesia, the content was in Bahasa. This is years back in like 2014, was doing like 1 billion views in those two markets. And I was like, wow, this is fascinating. And like just massive penetration. So that part was a lot of fun, actually trying to get parts of this ecosystem up. And by the time I relocated back to the States in 2015, we had actually kind of taken note of how much ad revenue was actually flowing through to these guys. And it was a larger number going to all these kids channels actually across the region than what Disney, Nick, or Cartoon Network are actually paying out in Asia for original programming. So we were kind of looking at like, what is our impact actually kind of on the industry? And we were like, we're actually feeling good. Like we're actually having a broader impact, on kids content producers, in the region. And then it wasn't just like coming out of one market and then for the whole region, but then you had a lot of these like local pockets. But in places like Thailand or Indonesia, actually to produce local content and to get it on broadcast TV in some of those markets, you actually have to pay the broadcaster. Like the broadcasters are not commissioning.
Like Transformers paid in Japan to broadcast the series in order to promote the toys. And the same was asked by Angry Birds, but I don't think they did it in China a few years ago when they came with their animation shorts and said, "Oh, we want to give it to you for free, like we do in all the other markets." The China TV told them, "No. This is advertising for your game. You're gonna pay us to wear it." And anyway.
But I think for some of these up and coming creators, it's like, well, if I can't get commissioned, like where's the economic incentive? And so I think with YouTube, it's also you're deficit financing. Like you make content, you put it out, YouTube pays you after the fact. And so then it was getting, I would go to MIPCOM or MIP Junior or Kidscreen, and I would meet some of these producers. And then after several, after 2-3 years of this, I would see some of the same people pitching the same show. And what they were trying to do was actually get, enough financing secured from all these global broadcasters to go greenlight the thing. And I was thinking like, well, if you put this actually on YouTube, you don't need 52 11-minute episodes. Like no one at YouTube is telling you like, this is, what we actually need. So you can actually go and you could start a lot smaller and then just get kind of an earlier read that is there any traction on the content that you're kind of developing. And actually I remember there's a creator in India that actually had their main kids channel, and they were very precious about actually what went up on that channel. And then his team would actually come up on their own with some original kind of IP. And so sometimes like if it wasn't good enough, again, it wouldn't get up on the main channel. But then he thought like, well, I don't want to like waste this and just like, have you discard it. But as they get on YouTube, it's like, well, it's quite easy to go set up a second channel. And so then he started creating additional channels, and so that the team, their side projects would actually make it there on the second channel. And then there was one creation that one guy in his team had actually made that he had actually thought not good enough for my main channel. So it goes up on the second channel and it blows up. It actually became the basis of a toy line. To where actually a major toy company actually leaned into it. And then he was kind of looking at that whole experience saying like, who am I to be, again, the arbiter And some of the stuff was like, just put it out there and let kids, show you basically with their time, and not just the views, but also the watch time. You could see how much time they're spending in kind of engaging with the content. So that was a whole process as well, like talking with some of these, producers, and I found some of the more successful kids creators actually did not come.
It almost sounds like this Frank Zappa black and white video of who killed the music industry, but in reverse, where he says, in the beginning we were trying everything and we didn't know what we were doing, and then some guys thought they knew what they were doing, and they were the deciders of tastes for everyone. And it seems like your friend went through it in reverse, like he was the decider of tastes, and then he realized, oh no, YouTube decides better than I do, should just throw it out there and see what sticks.
Yeah. And I know before, it's like, you have, if you're making a TV show, you're doing that for a specific kind of time slot, or if you're the broadcast, if you're the programmer for that network, like for Cartoon Network in Asia,
you might even have to care about the advertisers at that slot.
Well, there's that, but what I was going to say is that I think at that time, Cartoon Network was only making 2 original shows in Asia, and because the rest of their program grid was basically taken up by what was coming out of the U.S. from Cartoon Network Studios and Warner Brothers Studios. So as like an original creator, like, again, they only had 2 slots to fill. There was obviously way more potential content kind of for that. And then the other thing I remember in Southeast Asia is that they had 1 channel feed for the entire region, right? But then, having lived out there for a while, it's like, the Thai culture to the Vietnamese culture to the Indonesian culture, the Filipino culture, the Malay culture, like different cultures, languages. But on the Southeast Asia piece, again, the broadcast, because the cost to kind of run local channels, it's cost prohibitive to kind of go off and do that. So they have 1 feed for the whole region. Then what I was kind of seeing with YouTube is like, you're working on it on a different kind of starting point. So you can go put out a Thai channel, a Vietnamese channel, a Malay channel. You can start to tweak some of the content and be more, you can adapt that actually for the market. And it's, you're not playing the same game. So it's like, why even try to? And so that was a part that I found just fascinating kind of on that end. But then the other part was like, well, these broadcasters and these media companies can monetize in a lot of different ways, right? So they get the carriage fees, they get the advertising fees, consumer products, live events, and other things. And so then the same thing was like for some of these creators, it's like, oh, okay, you're out there building awareness, reach, and engagement, and building a community of very large numbers. But now, how do you start to turn on some of these other monetization levers that someone like Turner Broadcasting would actually have, or Viacom would actually have for its own channels? And that was I was starting down that kind of that path, and then I got asked to relocate to the U.S. and take on a different role. But that was the beginning kind of there, and then I was then working on kind of some similar things, but then broader and not just focused on kids, news, and education.
But I think what you were toying with and snowballing there was the beginning of YouTube Kids, right? And what it then became after you left, with former Turner colleagues of yours, if I remember right.
Yeah. Well, I was there on that founding team, and when we were kind of conceiving, like, what is this product going to be? The whole user experience, and then it was like, okay, we should actually go have some original content at the time that we actually launched this thing. And it was like, okay, we're going to launch it in the US first. But I remember thinking, like, well, no one ever said actually where the original content has to come from, just that it has to serve the US market. So I came back to the region after that first offsite, and I said to my team, like, hey guys, we should move quick. And the quicker we are to go and shape original programs, the more of that budget we're going to get for our partners. And so I had worked on a number of originals, but one I think that you'll be familiar with is Fruit Ninja.
Fruit Ninja.
And so,
the road.
Yeah, so I was aware, I I already knew Half Brick, and from my days at kind of at Turner, Chanel and the team, and I had actually reached out and I said, hey, is there any planning already going on about how you guys are looking at adapting the character and the IP from this game into animation, whether it's feature or series? And he said no. Or there's been some conversation, but it's not something that they're going to prioritize and focus on. But there's the company that was actually developing their game trailers had interest in that. So it was like, why don't you two go talk? And what I was interested in at the time was to test out, because they had like 50 million monthly active users. And what I was thinking is like, if you agree to actually embed the YouTube player, and we actually make good content, not ads, I bet that we can actually get pretty good retention on that content. And if we get good retention on that content,
Angry Birds did it with their first cinematic trailer, and it brought 100 million views over 2 years.
Yeah. Well, I was aware that I was aware of that kind of experience as well, because that was actually happening, I think, around the same time. And so what I was looking at was, is there a way that we can actually go and trigger YouTube's recommendation engine? And so, because Half Brick and Fruit Ninja had very low presence actually on YouTube at the time. And so I was like, could we actually make this thing, you guys actually help firehose users to it through your mobile game? And again, if the content can stand up, this thing will just take over. And YouTube will just start automatically kind of recommending this to other people because they'll see it as, good content that actually has good retention. And so it put that whole thing together. And so it was a fun process of getting the whole kind of creative team together, and then got that whole project kind of greenlit. Ended up actually going to YouTube Premium. So sat behind the paywall, other than the first episode. That first episode, I think, has like north of 500 million views.
At some point, it was the most viewed video on YouTube Kids, wasn't it? A few years ago.
But actually, a few of our originals in Asia at that time were actually some of the better performing in that first year for YouTube Kids. But I think for a lot of the partners that we worked with, it was the kind of first time that they were actually working with writers. And so we were kind of like, all right, you're doing royalty-free nursery rhymes. You got a lot of views actually on this content. You have characters that you keep showing over and over in these videos. Why don't we just go and tell the story of actually who those characters are and build that out? And again, not against like royalty-free nursery rhymes, actually invest into original IP. That actually can start to kind of build out your brand, the IP, some franchise development opportunity there. And again, for them, it was actually going through a new process of collaborating with preschool writers or writers that actually would write for that primary school kind of audience, other kind of animation studios, on that process, and from character design, development, world design, and all the way through. So it was a good opportunity to kind of upskill a lot of these creators actually in the region. So it was a fortunate time to kind of be there, when all that was starting to kind of come together, and it wasn't really a playbook.
I never understood why so much content came out of Asia in the beginning, but now I do.
I mean, our whole thing was like the US is a great market for engagement, monetization. I mean, it was already the case in television. There's a lot of great content that comes out of Korea, Japan, France. Right. And that then comes into the US. And so it was like, why should this be any different if we're making original stuff for YouTube Kids? And so I just started with that point. It was like, you need to convince me why we can't versus I need to convince you why we should. And so it was like, we're just going to do it. And then that's what I told, it's like, let's just go shape this stuff. And we got a bunch of things like ready and shaped and ready to go. And then we got them greenlit, financed, and produced. And so, yeah, it was fun.
The entrepreneur spirit, entrepreneur from the inside.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of, just trying to figure out like how decisions get made and who makes those decisions, and how you, there's a lot of just like pre-packaging, and like, I want to make this, and I want to get this to an easy yes. So you're working out like what are people like the metrics and the variables that they're actually paying attention to. So we did reverse engineer a bunch of stuff, and then made sure that the programs and the projects that we were kind of putting up, like they ticked all those boxes. And I mean, I got 3 shows produced at Greenlight, I think in like 90 seconds. Yeah, it was a lot of money that got agreed to in a very short amount of time. But it was all the prep work.
How
right?
many millions per second?
What's that?
How many millions per second?